I'm Terry Murphy. I'm the acting mayor. Whoever wants to go next, we can go right down the list if that's okay.
I'm Anthony Soto. I'm the superintendent of schools. Aaron?
Aaron, you want to introduce yourself too, just so everybody knows you, okay?
Oh, sure. So I thought usually people are referring to Aaron Brunel. My name is Erin Linville. I work for Anthony. I'm not officially a member, but in the staff support for the committee.
Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Mark Lubold, I'm not sure what we're supposed to say today since we gave introductions last time. I'm a member of the commission, I guess.
Okay, no, that's good. We're just kind of making sure everybody kind of gets the face and the words.
Oh, Mike Sullivan, City Councilor at Large.
Ray Martinez, member of the committee. And how about if we call the next person to introduce ourselves? Will, you will be next.
Yeah, thanks, Efrain. I'm Will Playo, candidate for Ward 2, City Council, member of the committee. Raina?
Thank you. I'm Raina, and I'm a senior auditor, and I'm a voting member of the committee. Deb?
Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Vega, and I'm on, this is my cat, Colleen, and I'm on the working committees. And I came in a little late. I had some trouble with my video, so I'm not sure who's already gone. So if you've already gone, I'm sorry about that. But I'll just call out David, who's Holyoke Tax Service.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Deborah. I'm Dave Yost. I've got my business name up there. And let's see. I'll call Jessica next.
Hello, I am Jessica Perella. I am a parent of 4 in the HBS schools, and I am a voting member of the committee and a student at UMass. I don't know, Jacqueline, did you go?
Hi, Jackie Clasheen. I'm the executive director of school leadership and also a member of the committee. And I will call out Sal Canada.
I knew I was coming. Hi, Sal Canada. I am the principal of STEM Academy Middle School here in Holyoke. Both my kids graduate from Holyoke High, longtime Holyoke resident. And I'm in my cellar and I'm wearing a t-shirt.
And who are you calling out?
I'm calling out, it says YD Axelrod.
Sorry, I couldn't. I'm Isaka Axelrod. I'm a professor at UMass in the College of Ed. I'm a parent of a Holyoke student, and I'm in one of the working groups. I don't know which one.
Thank you.
You'll know today.
Sorry, and I need to call somebody, and I don't know your name, but it says When We 72.
Yeah, I'm Wendy Weiss. I'm a parent of a 3rd grader and kids that aren't in school yet, and in the non-voting groups. Ebenezer.
That's me. I don't know how to change my name, but I'm Kathy. I am in the working committees. I don't know which one yet, and also I am a no voting member. I work at Homeboard House, and also I work at College of Career Readiness Advisor. So I'm really excited to be here with you all. And I'm gonna pass it down to Efrain Martinez.
I already went, so I'm passing it back to Samantha.
Oh, you won. Okay.
I think that all of the members had spoken.
Okay.
Sam's here for technical support.
Anthony, Erin Brunel is also should be on the committee, and she can't get in as a panelist. But she's trying. I think Erin Linville got that message.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Here she is.
How you doing, Erin?
Just for clarity, is Counselor Sullivan on the committee or just here as a candidate to participate? Because we want to just for clarity.
He's not on the committee.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we've got everybody. Did we miss
Mary, you
anyone?
didn't introduce yourself. You just asked a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Erin Burnell, School Committee at Large. Excited to work with you all on this project.
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep the, we don't have any. Aaron, do we have public comment now or?
No, I just wanted to say Josh Garcia is in the waiting room. I've tried to, he should be promoted to panelist soon. And I don't know if anyone knows Andy Gentile. I've tried to promote him to panelist like 10 times. If you know him and want to text him to.
Yeah, and Lynn Clark just has come in and I know he likes to skip. Lynn, Skip, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I don't see myself, but
we see you.
All right. I teach at HCC in Westfield State, and I had a number of ideas for the curriculum at the school. I used to teach 8th grade when I first started teaching, and I had a couple of ideas for the actual building structure, which I think might be helpful.
Yep.
But above and beyond that, I was just interested in providing or offering some ideas for the school's curriculum to try to help students as well as parents feel that they are really a part of the school and the school is theirs, which I think is important. Something that's been lost over the years, I believe. So I'm here to partake and participate.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
We appreciate that. And is there anyone else that we've missed? Joshua, you want to introduce yourself? Is Joshua in? Yeah, there he is. Joshua, you want to introduce yourself? Maybe he's not hearing me. Okay, so when we get him cleared up, we'll go from there, okay? So, we did review, and one of the things, we were trying to meet in person, but obviously, as I said, with all the things going on, plus the difficulty of having Holyoke Media televised from the auditorium, we ended up coming to the conclusion that our best bet for now is to do it on Zoom. So hopefully that'll work out for everybody. Eventually, obviously, one of the two gentlemen joining us will may be able to get it back in person. But for right now, assume we're going to be on Zoom at least until we get some of these other issues health-wise resolved. So, and hopefully, I think everybody was, as I understood it, Aaron, everybody was okay with the Zoom, right? There was nobody that had an issue with it?
Everyone seemed okay.
Okay. And we are actually being recorded on channel 15, I believe, not channel 12. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So it'll be on channel 15, not channel 12. Last time was channel 12, but this time it is on Holyoke Media channel 15. So just so you're aware of that. And the second, and Aaron, you're like you did last time, you are taking minutes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and she also did send out the minutes. So one of the things, if we can, if you have a chance to look over the minutes from the last meeting, and if there's any thoughts, comments, suggestions, concerns, or if we want to just accept the minutes as they are, that would be great.
I did get some email feedback
Okay.
on some small changes that I
Okay.
did make those, and they're fixed in the version that you have access to now.
Okay. Does everybody have a chance? And obviously that was just kind of our introductory meeting, so. Everybody's pretty good with that? All right, Joshua, if you want to just get a chance to introduce yourself for a moment.
No, thank you, Mayor Murphy. Hello, everybody. Joshua Garcia. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Josh. Okay,
Do you require a motion?
I'm gonna ask that too.
Do you require a motion to approve the minutes?
we can if you want.
No. You are the chair. You decide.
Yeah, well, to me, as long as you're all okay with it, I don't necessarily think, I think if we amend them when we're there, that would be fine. But if you want to have a formal vote, I'm fine with that too.
Well,
If everybody
does
was
the
okay
MS
with it, obviously we didn't take
Anything-
any votes or any action, so.
Does
it
the state
wasn't like-
require that, or
What was
does
that?
does the state require us to take a formal vote? You know, I just want to make sure we're all, you know, doing the right thing here along the way.
Aaron or Anthony, can either of you answer that? I'm thinking that they would
Why
not
don't we just
require a formal
formalize it, and
vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then the next thing on the agenda was for Anthony and Aaron to kind of go over the background materials. So Anthony or Aaron, you got it?
Yeah, so the next section of the agenda, I wanted to thank all of you that read all of the pre-read. Aaron works with the Holyoke Public Schools, and she's pretty much she's the project lead. She has a lot of experience in going through this process with us the last time around. And really the next few meetings is all about educating the board, educating this committee on you know, what the process was like the last time and what you can expect for this upcoming meetings. One of the things that I did want to clarify, it sounded like at the first meeting there was a lot of misunderstanding of what the purpose of this committee is. And so Aaron and I went ahead. So the MSBA doesn't have a formal job description of the school building committee. And but many other communities have gone through this process, and we reviewed their job description of the committees, and the one that we liked most was from Amherst. It's included in the agenda. Anyone who doesn't have the agenda, please say so in the chat, or Aaron can include it in the chat so that you can follow along. But this committee is appointed by the mayor. There's 13 voting members, and then there's some more non-voting members that could change based on the mayor's recommendations, both voting and non-voting. The term of the appointment, this could be a very lengthy process. So if you thought you signed up for a year and we're going to be done, you're in for a long ride, because the MSBA process is really lengthy, and we're just at the beginning of that process with this project. It could be anywhere from 4 to 7 years. As I mentioned before, we have Aaron, and we hope that all members could maintain regular attendance. Right now, tentatively, we're scheduled for Thursday, on Thursdays from 6 to 8, once a month. In some cases, we may have to meet more often. I think in this beginning phase of the process, we're not even in feasibility yet. So it's really just about information gathering and bringing a lot of the committee members up to speed. But once we get into feasibility and design, that's when an OPM would be really driving the process, and putting decisions in front of us that are going to have to be made. If there are members that tend to attend infrequently, miss many meetings in a row without any notice, the mayor does have the ability to replace that member and go through the same process they did. They just have a requirement to notify the MSBA in writing within 20 days. Some of our members will be required to attend MSBA best practices information sessions. It could vary from in-person or virtual, depending on what subcommittee you're on or what MSBA is offering. And the purpose of that is just to stay up to date on policy activities that are going on. But the main purpose of this committee, is to make sure that we comply with the MSBA regulations in generally monitoring the application process and to advise the mayor during the construction of an approved project. So at the last meeting, I know there was a lot of discussion about, this committee may be involved in deciding on curriculum. That is not the role of this committee. This committee is not about deciding what curriculum the Holyoke Public Schools is going to be using. The main purpose of this committee is to make sure that we are in compliance with MSBA regulations throughout the entire phase of this project. We're going to work with consultants, and the MSBA has pretty strict guidelines on things that we're required to do along the way. And if we're fortunate enough to be invited into the feasibility stage, one of the things we'll have to decide as a committee is we'll have to put out an RFP for an OPM, and there'll be a process where we select who the OPM is. The OPM is the owner's project manager, and they, for all intent and purposes, they are babysitters of this project. So they really hold our hand and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to be in compliance with everything that MSBA is requiring. They're the ones that help us develop a detailed timeline. They help us, they guide us every single step of the way and do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. But we don't do that until we don't get an OPM until we're invited into the feasibility stage of the process. There may be times where we do solicit input from this committee on things, educational programs and things of that nature. But ultimately, the school committee and the superintendent work together on things like that. And whenever we feel the need to bring in this body to consult with, we will.
Can I interject there for a minute, Anthony? If you don't mind, let me interject it.
Sure.
So as I talked with the people applying, and we talked about academic programs and stuff, one of the rationales that I had in trying to say that we need to be considering those is that also has an impact on the community support for the new middle school. So, I mean, all of those kind of things I think finance is going to be number one, but I think having community support for whatever academic programs are going and where they're going is important as well, because if we lose support in the community because we didn't do a balance or we didn't do this or do that, then that just creates one other potential dividing factor. And that's the only reason I really wanted to emphasize that while the committee doesn't have a final say in terms of what academic programs are there, having an understanding and being able to promote that to the community
for sure
and have the support of the community is, in my opinion, one of the elements that will gather somewhat a universal support within the community. So I think that's where I'm looking at the academic review and how do we balance it and how do we make sure all middle school students are getting the maximum educational program that we can offer. Thank you.
Yep. So our charge really is during the 270-day eligibility period. Like I said earlier, the next few meetings, we really want to we want the committee to get a really good understanding of the MSBA process, learn the history of the previous MSBA submission, and then really be champions of this project. I don't think that anybody here is volunteering their time because they don't want to see this project succeed. Everybody that's here wants to see this project succeed, and we need to be champions in the community and be knowledgeable in the process, so that when we do have conversations with stakeholders, it's really visible that members of this committee are knowledgeable in terms of where we're at, and help get buy-in and support. Like Terry mentioned right now, that's going to be, like Mayor Murphy mentioned, it's going to be a huge part of this process is getting the support of the community, and you as members of this committee are vehicles to do just that. You will be required to complete state ethics training, and you have to do it within 30 days of your appointment and every 2 years thereafter. And we hope that, every member is also supportive of helping us to get support in any appropriations that we need to get from the city council. So once we do get invited into the feasibility phase, that's where our role, that's where we're going to have to make some decisions as a committee. We're going to have to write a scope and then eventually hire the OPM, the owner's project manager, which are the ones that, like I said, help us throughout every step of the way. And it may require us to get additional consultants. So there'll be some working groups, and the full committee would have to make decisions on who those consultants are. And then work with the OPM closely to get us through the preliminary design phase and the preferred schematic. Those are all things that once we get there, you'll learn more about those things. But first we need to get into the feasibility stage. I don't want to read all of these things word for word, but there are certain votes along the way that this committee has to. Anything we submit to the MSBA, like any other the educational plans or anything like that, we would vote on those here in committee, and then get them submitted to the MSBA. We hope that everyone listens to understand. We want to make sure everyone's respectful, especially when we don't agree. And then everybody should be making a commitment to work outside of these meetings, which includes a lot of the pre-work and then working group participation. Again, one of the other things that I think this group should be doing is providing quarterly updates to both the city council and the school committee, so that the school committee and the city council are up to date on where we are in the process. And like I said, this isn't this document here that you are all seeing is not something that we pulled off of MSBA. They don't have a script, but what we did was looked at other communities and settled on this. It's open to, if anybody has any feedback. Right now it's in draft form, but I really would like to solidify this as our guiding document in terms of what this committee is supposed to be doing. If anybody has any feedback, just open it up right now. Feedback on the job description. Aaron? Brunel?
Yeah, not feedback on the job description per se, but for the MSBA, we're supposed to have somebody from the city municipally on the finance side of things, but we don't have a sitting city councilor appointed to the committee. So who's fulfilling that role?
Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah. So Aaron had asked this question earlier, if I was a voting member, and to the best of my knowledge, I was the council rep on the last one, and I'm still the council rep on this committee as well. To the best of my knowledge, you might want to check on that, Terry.
Okay.
And also, it does bring up the question in any event, one way or the other, I won't be around in January. So we may want to engage with the council, to find out who is going to be taking my place, if that is still the case,
So there's currently not a city councilor listed as a committee member. So Mayor Murphy, did you appoint somebody?
What I did is
assume that
appointed
Councilor Sullivan would be fulfilling the role.
No, I appointed Will Puello under the idea that he was going to be city council come January and fill in the seat. And up until recently, that was fine. And now we're getting a little feedback on that, but we haven't.
I'm just not sure it is fine. So I want to make sure that it is and that there's clarity of who exactly is on the committee, who's representing which roles, to make sure that we're fulfilling what MSBA requires of us as a body.
I understand what you're saying. Councilor Sullivan, you all set, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll look into that, Mike.
Yeah, I hear you, Aaron. We'll have to look into that. We did get a request, a little pushback from the MSBA that I think the mayor himself is representing too many buckets that are required. So we'll just have to address that, Mayor Murphy.
If I may just add too, I mean, we ultimately, this all gets voted on by the city council at the end of the day. So not only should the body have somebody appointed from the city councilors should be wanting to be chiming in and viewing this process. At the end of the day, we're trying to pass this with the city bond. So having somebody from the finance committee in particular on this committee would be highly beneficial.
And I'm on the finance committee. So.
Okay, Anthony, you all set, Anthony, or where are we going from here?
Yeah, I'm all set. If no one has any feedback on this job description, we can make it official, and this would be the job description of the middle school building committee for Holyoke. If after reviewing this later you feel you want to add something or change something, please just reach out to Aaron Linville, and then we can bring this back to the table. But if not, this is our official guiding document for what our role is on this committee.
Could you also have Aaron or yourself send out the state ethics training so everybody? I'm assuming it's online, correct?
The link in the minutes or in the
Yes.
agenda.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay,
it's actually linked in the
okay,
in that job description. If anybody has trouble accessing it, what I can do right now is I'll link it in the chat so you have it and you can save it.
And it's 30 days from what date are you?
From the date you were appointed.
Okay.
or it
Which
needs
is
to be
coming
done,
up soon.
it needs to be done relatively quickly.
I know.
Well, either coming out sooner or really have elapsed. So when is the official date of appointment? Is it when we met first?
That's a good question. I'm going to assume it was the date we had our first meeting.
Yep.
If you do so, that gives us a handful of days to comply.
I linked the website to the state ethics training. I've had to do this many times. It's pretty easy to go through, but it's linked in there.
Is there any question about the OPM designer or OPMs and how that plays a role and when that plays a role? Okay.
I wanted to, Whitney and I had a good conversation today, and if Whitney's here, is he on? Just to kind of speak for him, he reminded us that we got the approval that if we would have the same OPM and designer, because this project is similar enough, we wouldn't have to go out to RFP. So that would be the work of this group to decide how much to use from before versus how much new to do. And so I'm hoping that at an upcoming meeting, we could more fully understand the last project, look at the last our RFP, and then make that decision. Sorry, I lost internet for a second.
And economically, that's more financially viable, correct?
Much more viable. We can get into this more a little bit before, or later, but this city's allocated previously 1.2 million, of which 80% was reimbursed. Because we've already gone through this process, the MSBA wouldn't be reimbursing any of those expenses. So any money we spend on it is City of Holyoke money. So if we can reuse work that's already been done, which an existing OPM and designer could do, but then tweak what we need to for now, that would save us a lot of money.
And I just want to make it clear, everybody, whether you're a voting member or non-voting member, you get to participate in this. So if that, I saw something, I'm not sure if that was the question that came off, but if it was, I want to make sure you're all feel free to participate. Okay. And when would that OPM ordinarily be hired? If we renew it, when would that renewal take place?
I think that's a good segue into the next part of the
Okay.
agenda, because
Okay.
Aaron's going to take us through
Okay.
in detail the like a high level timeline of the project.
Okay. Aaron?
Sure. I'm going to go on to screen share so everyone can see everything. Okay, so I linked in the agenda for you the vote authorization language, and I linked the deliverables for eligibility. We have done a lot of work already, so we should, or not a lot, but we've started. We already have these first two deliverables done. We're super close to finishing these next two deliverables, the Ed Profile Questionnaire and the online enrollment projection. And then this is not a big lift at all. We don't have to do the maintenance and capital. And so the biggest work for this group is working with the city council to secure the local vote authorization, which then which is both like we want to move forward with this project and we're willing to put money behind this project. April 29th is the absolute deadline. If we don't meet that, then we're really pushing the project further out, and we have gone beyond the eligibility period. So we'd have to ask for I don't know, an exception or something on that. But there's a couple things I want to iterate when we talk about this. Is like Anthony was saying, the work of this group is a lot about learning right now. So the quicker, the more intense we are about our learning now to decide what we want for OPM and designer and how much money we need to set aside, the sooner that we're able to get in front of city council to talk about this, the sooner that we can move this project forward. So I just wanted to review for you. You see here, so basically what I want to, like Mayor Murphy said at the last meeting, we encourage this school department to try to get this done by fall 2025. I'm going to show you that if we stick with the typical dates, we don't use the work that we did before, it's actually going to be a 5 to 7 year process, putting us at 2026 to 2028. But this is one area, the most significant thing we can do to move this project along right now quickly is to work with the city council on getting the vote authorization sooner than that absolute deadline. So the MSBA has 3 meeting dates coming up. One is March 2nd, April 27th, or June 22nd. I would talk to Elena Setti at MSBA, and they would need the information, like the signed local vote authorization from the city council about 30 days prior. So if we wanted to make the March 2nd meeting, we would need to have the information to the MSBA by January 31st. If we want to make the April 27th meeting, we have to have the information to the MSBA by March 28th. If we stick with this April 29th deadline, the soonest the MSBA will even talk about us would be June 22nd, which is beyond the end of the school year. And I talked with Whitney this morning to kind of better understand how long did the vote authorization and conversations with the council take last time. He recommends Based on his experience, he's like, we should really plan for 2 months on that because, it takes a while to get on the city council agenda. It would probably be referred to the finance subcommittee, then has to go back to the full city council. So basically this first column shows when should we begin working with the city council to move this forward. So really like the best case scenario, in my opinion, would be that by December, we should be December 1st, we should begin to work with the city council in order to have something submitted by January 31st to the MSBA and able to make it to the March 2nd deadline. I'll just pause there with questions and then also ask Sam, since I'm presenting, I think that Whitney might be on the phone, and Steve Mahoney, if you could promote them from panelist, that would be great. Or promote them to panelists. Does anyone have questions about the timeline of this and why it matters? Sal?
Yeah, just a quick one. When you say work with the city council, I'd love to know what that means. Does that mean we're getting our stuff to them in time so they can get it on docket and on the agenda? Or is that actually physical meeting with city councilors to move this forward?
I would defer to city councilors, but like in my opinion, or my understanding, like I would love to be invited to present some of our work and where we're at. Then we would get referred to subcommittee. Maybe subcommittee would be the first time we present our work, but Councilor Sullivan, could you speak to that?
Yeah. Am I on here?
Yep. You're all set, Mike.
Okay. So we've got a bit of a problem that we didn't have the last time around. Number one, it's an election year, and we already know for a fact that 4 counselors won't be returning in January. So I will discuss this with the council president tomorrow. We don't even know for sure who the council president will be come January. So it's going to be a bit awkward. My instinct from having been there for a few years now, and you can correct me, Terry, but they're not going to want to make decisions and then hand them off, those decisions off to a new council, having been made as lame ducks or, during a change in administration here. So it'll be good to get the ball rolling. Yes, but I don't see any votes being taken, and they'll want to involve whoever the new members are that'll be carrying the ball forward for the next 2 years after that.
So if that would be the case, like February, maybe we could begin working with the city council February 1st, have 2 months to work with them and submit the information to MSBA by March 28th. That would still save us 2 months because we would be able to get to the April 27th board meeting instead of the June 22nd board meeting.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we should hesitate getting things rolling, but as far as getting anything that requires a vote.
Is this requiring a financial vote, or is this requiring just an affirmative vote?
No, there needs to be an appropriation of funds.
Okay. And this is related
for feasibility.
Okay. So this is for the OPM people? Or?
Yep, and designer.
Okay.
And designer, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with Councilor Sullivan on this case. I think if we tried to do it in December, then you end up with the holidays. We could end up doing tax classification. Could be a variety of things. And then the new council comes on, and how long does it take the president to get a committee, all the committee assignments, and then what happens there? So my gut is you're probably looking at February to get into the April 27th MSBA meeting. I'd be surprised if it was sooner. I mean, you never know, though.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, it is possible we'll know, November 3rd who the new council members are, and it would be possible, to start working with them. I know that, when I first came on 6 years ago, I was allowed to sit in on the council meetings. So it is possible, but it's something we ought to start addressing. I'll start addressing it tomorrow morning with the president. So
Thank you very much.
Anthony?
Yeah, thank you. Can we just for, I don't know if everyone knows how the city council works, but my experience with the city council is that if we wanted to get on the agenda to report, to report out on this, normally it gets sent to subcommittee first, or can one of you explain that? Either Mayor Murphy or Councilor Sullivan. Most of the time I go to the full committee, it gets referred right away to subcommittee to then get bounced back up. I think that we should have the opportunity to report out on the process to the school committee. And when we say February 1st, remember, that's kind of when we want them, that's when we want the full committee to be involved. So I don't know if we need to kind of work backwards on a subcommittee or anything like that, but if you could clarify on that, Mayor Murphy, I think it would be helpful for all the members of the committee.
Well, almost everything that gets to city council gets referred to committee, to a subcommittee. So, and ordinarily, not always, but ordinarily, in a regular schedule, subcommittees would meet in between the 2 weeks that the city council meets and come out with a recommendation to the full city council, which then can take a vote or in some cases ask for more information. But most of the information that's shared by the city council is received during subcommittee meetings. So, and it is, I would say you need a month process at least. And then after that, the city council more than likely would take a vote. Obviously, you've got the two mayoral candidates here, so they would also be very active in both putting together a financial document, but also in terms of working with the city council to move the process along. So, I mean, I have, other than financing, which is the only thing I keep hearing, I see most of the current city council, and from what I'm gathering, most of the candidates somewhat being favorable towards this. And I haven't spoken with all of them personally, but that's what I've been gathering. If I can, I've got Aaron and then Mark. Aaron,
I just want to thank Anthony for that clarity and point of timeline. So we should probably want to present to the city council subcommittee at the very least. Like you said, we need to start getting in their calendar. So we need to go in front of the full council like November, December, to then get referred to subcommittee in January, in time for them to be able to report back to the full committee to have the first be a full-on vote, not just discussion and referred back out. So we need to be in front of the city council, I would say in November for the first time, presenting to somebody about something to start this process.
Yeah, November 16th would more than likely be the earliest chance to present to the full city council.
Okay.
And both Mike and Josh have, you know, they once one of them knows which one won, they'll be sitting down with me for those 10 days, and we can certainly try to work that out. But obviously, we also have to have the financial aspect, because what we would be submitting would be not only the documentation but also the financial bonding requirement. So, which does require a 2/3 vote of the city council. So.
That's the vote that we need on the first, is the 2/3 vote to advance.
Well, because it's a financial transfer, we have to appropriate some funding. We're approving the funding, as I understand it. And therefore, it does require a 2/3 vote.
So I just wanted for clarity, Mr. Murphy, that's the vote on the first. That's what we're voting to approve is the finance, all the package. But we need all of that in place to begin the process of getting on the city council agenda?
No, you can get on an agenda, but I will tell you, by having the money with it, you'll get on the agenda quicker.
Right.
And I actually think you'll get a fuller hearing. And Mike, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think you get a fuller hearing when we're dealing with money. And obviously we have to deal with the money in order to get the feasibility approved by MSBA. And Anthony, if I'm wrong on any of that, please correct me. And Aaron, are you all set? Can I go to Mark? Mark?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we could probably get on the agenda anytime if it's gonna go to committee, so it's there waiting for us as we have all the information, that we don't have to submit it to the full council again and then have to wait to go to committee, that we're already there. Now, we're not even gonna know an amount of money at that vote, is that correct?
That is incorrect. I think we could, it's my understanding, and Whitney could correct me if I'm wrong, but this committee should decide if you want to go all in, and then you could use this next part of what I'm going to talk about. You could use $800,000 as an estimation if you wanted to get a whole new OPM and designer. If you feel like you might want to reuse the work and just update the work from the last time around, we would reach out to Margaret Wood, our previous OPM, and Dory Brooks, our previous architect, and her team, to see like what would it cost to re-engage them. From that though, they're going to want to know like how much, they're going to want to know an appetite of like how much do we want to reuse what's before or start anew. So I think maybe that the next meeting we could talk more about like what was done before and why. Maybe we could invite them as guests perhaps, and maybe the previous chair, Devin Sheehan, for example, to talk about it.
Yeah, so we could actually get on the agenda quicker, so it goes to finance. So it's there waiting for us.
But we can't go to finance without the dollar amount, because they won't. If we don't have the dollar amount with them, they will not act on it.
Well, can something be submitted that a not to exceed $800,000 be put in there as an initial amount? Because we're not gonna, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can hear what you're saying, but I just having been there for the last 3 years, I know, and Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but every time we talk money, it is very specific. This is how much, not to exceed, and this is the amount, and this is what it specifically is designed to do. And if we make a change to that, then there's a requirement that it comes back to city council. So, Mike?
So once that dollar amount is in, that's the dollar amount. If it changes, it has to go back to the full board and then back to the subcommittee for discussion.
If there's an amendment, it probably would, but certainly the first vote is going to go all the way through and with a dollar amount to the finance committee, and then the finance committee will make a recommendation. We think we should spend $800,000, or just throwing that number out, $800,000 for this, to hire this group to do this feasibility study to get the design work done. And city council says, we think that's an appropriate amount of money. We're going to support that. And then we send that to MSBA saying we now have the financial backing of the city council to move forward on this. But I believe it's got to be I think it's got to be a specific amount.
Permission, I would love to talk about the rest of this piece, because just looking at the time and trying to get out by 8:15, this piece was supposed to be done at 6:45.
Let me just recognize Ephraim, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I'm a little bit confused. There is an opportunity to save some money if we preview the design already made and adapt it. So I would imagine that if this city council is like any other city council, lower amount will be that much more palatable. So shouldn't we start as soon as possible looking at what the design is and what are the advantages and disadvantages of following, and using that as a draft, if you will?
I think that is what we were looking at doing for the next meeting, as I understood it. We were going to bring them in and say, this is what's happened before. This is how we can save money by keeping the same people. Then, maybe we alter the design a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, but the school staff and maybe others have to be very helpful to us in saying, these are the advantages and these are not the disadvantages, because a presentation on design on somebody that already made a design will try to sell it to us.
Well, there's a lot of us that were a part of it before, Anthony was on it before,
Okay.
Counselor Sullivan, Devin Sheehan, I'm sure would be happy to come and present. So that I think that we could, like.
So we will rely on
have-
you to
Yes,
help us point toward the issues that will make it clear whether or not that would be a good strategy.
Yeah, and the other thing with the MSBA was to also, they encourage us to look at model schools. Oh, I also forgot, like Whitney is like a top-notch person for us to be talking to on this. He's been through other projects before too. So I think if we bring in the OPM and designer and then bring in past committee members, some of which are on this committee, we could have a good discussion of understanding and then decide how quick we want to try to get on the council agenda. I like that suggestion. Okay.
You all said
So the vote authorization is linked for you in there. You can go back to the agenda and read it. There's a link to the previous expenses for feasibility. So just so you guys all know, on March 22nd, 2017, that's when $800,000 was appropriated for feasibility, which includes that owner's project manager. And then once you get the OPM, they wrote this, helped work with the committee to write the scope for the designer. And then we selected the designer, like the committee, I wasn't on the committee. And then when the decision was made to go after two middle school buildings, that's when they added on October 2nd, 2018, $390,000 for that second building. I wanted to reiterate again, MSBA paid for 80% of these costs, but will not pay for the cost this time around for this part of it because they already paid for the work once. I also want to iterate, when we get to our presentation, we surveyed people, and I think it was about Dr. Mahoney can call it up at that time, but there was a large majority of people that wanted us to try to use the work from before in order to save time and money. I also linked for you in here something from the MSBA, just what designer and OPM fees by building type were, so you can look at the different percentage ranges on there. And then Amherst, a local community that did this recently appropriated $750,000 for school design. They're a good benchmark for us, in my opinion, because they were in a similar situation to us where they had a failed project and now have re-entered. And they're like a year or two kind of ahead of us. I think about a year. Before I go on to telling you guys like what the whole timeline of the project could be, it seems like Dave might have a question. I'm not sure if I'm allowed.
I just wanted to clarify, model schools would be a substitute for the OPM and designer, or a partial substitute for it?
What was that again, please?
Yeah, I'm just asking if using a model schools would substitute for the OPM and designer, or substitute for part of it. We do one or the other.
The model school represents a plan which is available to all invitees, such as the city of Holyoke, for purposes of not starting from scratch. The unique thing about the location for the Peck School is the topography. There is over 50 feet of slope from the front door to the back door. So therefore the model school model truly does not work itself effectively into the existing site of the Peck School. And just to relate back to Ephraim's comments in regards to the opportunity that is before the board, and this truly is the School Building Advisory Committee now that would guide this process and perhaps deem in their wisdom to take advantage of the design work which has been completed to date to model this particular school itself to fit the site and the educational requirements of that particular location. So I do find a tremendous value in what has been established so far. And my personal recommendation for expediency as well as efficiency would be to continue on with that existing design, making modifications upon closer inspection if necessary, but then you can immediately negotiate with the OPM and the designer for a cost to bring those documents to a point of relevancy so they can be submitted with great efficiency for the city of Holyoke.
Thank you, Whitney.
The short version of that, thank you, Whitney. Even if we do a model school, we're still gonna need a OPM and a designer. So like, no,
Yes.
one doesn't replace the other.
Jessica?
Because there's the reimbursement and things, there's no way that they can reimburse currently. Is there a reason not to use the previous designs and OPMs?
Not at all, in my opinion.
I think anyone that would argue that we shouldn't, maybe, like, I've heard people say, like, don't you think we should get a new person because this last project failed and a lot of the misinformation about the 80%. I honestly don't think, like, my personal opinion, just like Whitney's, I don't think that they're the reason that this project failed last time. So I'd be happy to argue against anyone that would suggest that. I think they did a good job. They've done a lot of work. They really, really educated us on the process. This project failed because of a vote and funding.
Right. There was no support.
Exactly.
Ephraim, are you going to be recognized again?
Yes, so a quick question. I was going to ask, why did the project fail? But no, a better question and quicker would be, did it fail because of the design or other reasons?
I think most people think it failed because of financial.
So there's nothing to blame in the design for the failure. Okay.
No,
The main
absolutely
reason it
not.
failed in just
Aaron?
like in Aaron's pre-work, is that the way it reads is that you're going to get 80% reimbursement. So people got stuck on that 80% reimbursement rate, but it's that 80% is only based on that $330 per square foot cost, when the average school actually costs $650 per square foot. So it was messaging at the end of the day, right? If the messaging had come off differently and it was, I don't know, that's really what it boiled down to, is that people couldn't get past the fact that we really weren't getting 80%.
I definitely think that was part of it, but ultimately I think it came down, if we don't have to go and go above the natural taxes, I think this is going to pass. So that's just my gut feeling. But if we have to go well beyond that, then I think we're going to have more issues to deal with. So
I'd like to comment in regards to Aaron, what Aaron just said. And
okay,
Aaron, that's a strong consideration and a point of understanding that needs to be made aware to everyone ahead of time as best as possible, is that the base rate of reimbursement is $80, 80% of the actual cost. But the caveat there, as you said, is the construction reimbursable per square foot is $333, when in actuality the costs are much higher than that. So dollar for dollar, what happens is that the effective reimbursement, which is the actualized amount of money that the city of Holyoke will receive, is significantly less than 80%. And that fact has to be understood very clearly from the outset. Now, that will only be realized when the project is bid and we actually see what the actual costs will be in comparison to that $333 base reimbursement. But it's very important what you just said.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah, just I make it real simple. It was the need for a debt exclusion override to fund the two schools. The debt exclusion override was really the killer on it.
Mm-hmm.
If I can make one last point on finances, and I do think this is something that this committee is going to have to consider, the first of all, more than likely the cost, if we did the exact same thing, and Whitney, you correct me if I'm wrong here, more than likely the cost now is going to be greater than it would have been 2 or 3 years ago. So that's number one. If we got the same percentage reimbursement, what we have gotten now from bond counsel relates to the same price for the school and the same reimbursement formula, and that fits into the city's financial picture without any debt exclusion or override. So the committee needs to take a look as you go along in terms of reviewing. If we review the same building, what would that cost be now? And would we still get the same amount, and therefore we have to pay substantially more, or did the price go up and now we got to pay even more? So those are financial perspectives that are going to have, that you're going to have to consider in terms of how it relates to the city's ability to pay within its own taxing structure. That's basically what I've seen. And Aaron, I'm going to go with you one more time, and then I know I'm getting notes here that we're getting late.
So I'm pretty positive that the lead architect group, or the woman, the amazing Dory, I believe was her name, who did all the presenting,
yep,
had that in the numbers from the last build, right, Whitney? So that we would have projected costs. I mean, we had projected increased costs even if we delayed 6 months, a year. So I'm sure we have those numbers, right? Or at least you would be able to quickly tell us like what the average rate of inflation has been on construction costs.
Absolutely. You can extrapolate that 2 years down the road. What you would be buying to hire on an OPM and designer now, utilizing the existing ones that are in place and just renegotiating for a refresher to the existing work, would be an effective estimate from an estimations company, which specializes in that service, which will bring you into today's cost. Any increase in cost would effectively have an adverse effect on the reimbursement rate. So yes, you could extrapolate. You could bring it up 3 or 4%, but in some instances, we're seeing greater inflation with some of the component costs of the structure.
Thank you, Whitney. Skip, I'm going to recognize Skip, and I'm going to recognize Skip. He hasn't asked anything yet, and then I know they would like to move on to the middle grades collaborative study if we can.
Well, we also aren't done on me explaining the rest of the timeline real quick.
Okay.
I would like permission to do that after.
Okay,
Skip
Skip.
speaks.
Mayor Murphy, can we just hold questions until we're done with that section?
I'm not sure it's
and
a
then
question.
when we get to the next section, maybe hold questions till after we're done.
It might just be a comment, though. Let's Skip.
Yeah, I just, I know you need a building. I think we'd be missing a great opportunity if we didn't take advantage of the time that you have to do things that would help the community want this school and to care for the school and feel as though they are a part of the school. And I think there's a number of things that could be done in terms of creating programs. And I, for one, would be happy to sit down with some of the teachers who will be teaching there and discuss ideas that I think could go a long way to helping students feel like the school is theirs and that they are proud to be a student at that school, to give them some sense of ownership. And one of the ideas I had was, I think, and that goes for the parents too. I think if you elicited ideas from parents and the students, give them a chance to offer some ideas of things that they would want to do, I think you vastly improve your chances of developing a certain love for the school and not just an educational facility. But one of the ideas I had was, I think you should invite any student, any teacher, any parent to lay one brick. Have the bricks numbered, keep a log, give everybody who wants to an opportunity to lay one brick somewhere in the school. And by doing that, I think it can help them feel as though this is their school. They're a part of it. They helped build it, even though it may be a very small way. I think that can go a long way to improving the overall attitude of students and parents toward the school at which the kids are going to. But I think you need to, if you're going to do something like that, you need to start at some point in time. You don't want to wait until the school's built and then start to inquire about, do you have any suggestions or ideas as to what you want to do? Yeah. It's too late then.
No, I think as we go through, and that is, and getting feedback and getting thoughts, comments, and feedback from the community is, and parents and students and teachers are all going to have to be part of the process. Aaron, I'm going to let you go. I know you want to finish this part.
And I just wanted to say the middle grades collaborative study team that's presenting reflects exactly what Mr. Clark said about getting input and voice. I want to refer in the bottom of the agenda so everyone knows this is what the modules look like for the MSBA building process. So you see with a star where there's a board vote, that's MSBA board, and you see with the dollar sign when there's a money vote from our side, and you see the parts in blue, like the eligibility period is like, that's a lot of work from the district. We're leading this pretty much by ourselves. And then we form the project team, that's us and the OPM together. And then the heaviest lift is in green is from the construction professional. So then that goes on to feasibility and schematic design. And it's back to us for funding the actual building. And then we would go to detailed design, construction, and completion. So just so everyone knows, like last time we made it up to schematic design, and that's kind of where our existing stuff takes us through. I summarized for you all so you understand what the different modules mean and the purpose of that. Focusing on feasibility, just want to understand what people know what's coming up, since that's the next stage. Is that's when we document the educational program and existing conditions. We generate an initial space summary. We establish design parameters. We evaluate alternatives, and we recommend the most cost-effective and educationally appropriate preferred solution. And there's two important reports that the OPM would submit for us, which is the preliminary design program and a preferred schematic. So we have those things from last time to refer to. The other thing I wanted to show you all is that like this is, if we go the long way with this, where we don't reuse any of the work, like, you know, we're really not getting a new build. If these are those same phases, we're not getting a new building until the end of 2027. I personally am hopeful that, you know, we can save time, especially on this in the feasibility and design section, if this committee decides to reuse some of that work. Next, I wanted to, that's all that in that section. We're ready to move on to the middle grades recommendations, if that's okay with me or Murphy.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce, or no, you guys, I'm going to pass it off to Jackie Clasheen, one of your committee members.
Hey, Jackie.
Aaron, you're doing slides for me, Aaron?
Yes. You got it. Can you guys see the cute picture, or handsome picture? Nice picture.
Hi, everybody. We're happy to have you here today. We're going to go to the next slide, which is our agenda. My name is Jackie Clasheen. I'm the Executive Director of School Leadership, which means I supervise and support many of our elementary school and middle school principals. I have been a principal at Ian White, at Kelly School, which both had middle schools at one point. And Ian White has the growing dual language program. My teaching career was solely in a middle school at John J. Lynch Middle School, where I was a middle school special education teacher. My husband and my kids and I are all from Holyoke. I have a junior at Holyoke High currently, and I'm currently sitting on this committee with you. The main purpose of today is to share the recommendations from the middle school collaborative study team on the middle school experience. There are many things that we agreed upon on this middle school collaborative study team. And then there are other things that we left undecided or need to be figured out by other leaders in the city. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I want you to think for a minute of a middle school student you know who did not get what they needed in middle school to be successful. So this might be a friend of yours, this might be a student you taught, this might be your own child or you as an adolescent. Now, I want you to imagine if this child was given the academic and social emotional support they needed in middle school. How might their experience have been different? How might their high school experience have been different? And how might their life outcomes have changed? Just think for 20 seconds about that student. And then I'm going to ask two people to share out. Anybody want to be brave and share who they thought about? I cannot see everybody, Air, so if anybody sees a hand and I don't see it, please just call it out. I'm going to share a friend that do you see somebody?
Jackie, yeah, this is
Yeah.
Mahoney. This is Steve Mahoney.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I'm a plant. So just in case everyone, in case Jackie's question stumped everyone, I want to talk about Matt Foley, who came from a really large family. He had 12 brothers and sisters. He was kind of smack dab in the bottom third of the Foley ladder. And in 6th and 7th grade, he was, one of the best athletes, one of the smartest kids in the town where I grew up. And somewhere along the line in 7th and 8th grade, he got lost. And by the time, we got to 11th grade, Matt was not playing sports anymore. He was no longer really coming to school, and just never fulfilled the potential that he had when he was this great, crazy 11, 12-year-old kid.
So
Anthony raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I just I think about my own brother. My own brother Juan grew up same mom, same family, same household, and unfortunately his middle school experience was so bad that he never even made it to high school. He dropped out of school in 7th or 8th grade, and like I said, it wasn't because of something that was happening at home. It was because his experience in middle school wasn't great, and he wasn't able to make good connections with people like I was, like Mr. Dubelo and Mr. Murphy, and all the people that in my middle school that I remember. I felt like they really cared about me. My brother didn't get that experience.
Thanks, Steve and Anthony, for sharing. We as a school district have a responsibility to every single child in the Holyoke Public Schools. Our responsibility is to meet their academic and social needs and support their growth, everybody. Therefore, we need middle schools that work for every current and future student in the HPS middle school, not some, but all. And I say here that I live in Holyoke, and I see people in Stop and Shop, and people often say to me, well, it's there if the kids just participate and they, there's great teachers, the education's there, they're just not taking part in it. And I would respectfully disagree. If they're not taking part in it, then we need to serve them something different. And we need to make sure that we reach every single kid with what they need emotionally, academically, socially. And we can't just rely on the scores of kids who quote unquote participate. So back when Dr. Reich first became the receiver in 2015, he did a lot of listening tours, and he was struck by how many family, staff, and community members approached him about wanting to change the K-8 model. how those stakeholders really wanted distinct elementary and middle schools. It wasn't Dr. Reich's intention to come in here and change the configurations, but after so much anecdotal feedback, he felt it was important and to be more systematic in gathering input and study what other options might be right for Holyoke. In school year 16-17, with the support of Education Resource Strategies, we embarked on a listening tour where we held 4 community input sessions and hosted sessions at each school for staff members. There was overwhelming support for distinct elementary and middle schools. The most significant reason we heard was a desire for programming and experiences tailored to either elementary or middle schools, that it is very difficult to meet the needs of a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old in the same building. I can attest to that at both Kelly and Ian White. Especially when our buildings are physically smaller. You know, all of our current K-8s were really built to be elementary schools. People especially felt, and many continue to feel, that our K-8 setup treats middle school students like elementary students. They stay together in the same class, they walk in lines, they have limited choices for specials and extracurriculars. And from a staff perspective, many staff recommend fewer grades in a school so that they could become more specialized in serving those grades, as well as more students per grade so that teachers can collaborate together, so that special education and English language learner teachers can serve 1 to 2 grades instead of 4 to 5, which many serve now. So the district began to move in this direction by introducing 2 new middle school models, Veritas Prep and Holyoke STEM. This has also allowed some schools to become just elementary schools. The challenge is that we haven't gotten a new building yet, so we have more schools and haven't been able to finish this conversation to distinct elementary and middle schools. You can see on this slide how our pre-K-8 portfolio has changed since school year 15-16. We are now where we are now and where we'd like to go. By opening up new middle schools, we inadvertently reduced the average size of our schools from 412 students to just 331. With one of our schools, Lawrence, only having 167 students right now. Some of this is also due to the population shifts in our city. The average size school in Holyoke is below national and state averages, which are more than 400 for elementary schools and nearly 600 for middle schools. By having small schools, our resources are constrained and we cannot offer as many opportunities for students. Additionally, as we are in this mix of transitioning, you'll see that we went from 4 different grade configurations across schools in school year 15-16 to 9 different grade configurations across 11 schools and across 10 different buildings. That is difficult to manage and confusing for almost everyone to understand. In our ideal state, hopefully with a new school building, we would have 8 to 9 elementary schools and elementary and middle schools, that with a range of 360 to 550 students per building and only 2 different grade configurations. It has also resulted in the average size of schools in HBS is below the national average and state average. The schools that are closest to middle schools, Peck, STEM, and Veritas, have an average of 306 students versus 595 in Mass and 575 in the US. The schools that are closest to being elementary schools, all others, have an average enrollment of 371 students versus 412 in Mass and 453. So the middle school collaborative study team hired CanBR Education to support the work of the middle grades study team. The team consisted of 16 HPS people, including school leaders, teachers, parents, and district leaders. We also had someone with a counseling background, someone on the family and community engagement team, and a school committee member. We met 7 times and had homework between the sessions. The purpose of the team was to understand the middle school work that has been done to date in Holyoke and the Holyoke Middle School experience today. The team also studied best practices in middle level education across the country and talked with experts in the field. Using input from many sources, we developed a vision and a preliminary plan for middle level education. Well, there is a lot of work to be done. We're here today to share some of the work that we did with you. So our team did a ton of outreach. It was very important to develop an engagement process that was inclusive and included the voices of those impacted. We engaged hundreds of people through one-on-one interviews, focus groups, meetings, and surveys over the past 4 months in order to solicit their input on what middle school in Holyoke should look like. Some feedback was super high level and other feedback was super concrete. Like when we heard from high school students about the importance of just letting students go to the bathroom on their own time and not line up as a group. I share that story as one example of a concrete way we could live out a belief of valuing adolescents, for example. I am going to pass off next to the data highlights. And I believe it's Dr. Mahoney.
Thanks, Jackie. Just a very brief introduction. Stephen Mahoney. I've been here in Holyoke Public Schools for the past 4 years. I have the pleasure of working with Jackie in the Office of School Improvement and Leadership. I started as the executive principal at Holyoke High School as we were launching the redesign and the kind of rebirth of Dean Vocational, and have moved into the position as Chief of Schools under Anthony's superintendency. And I've been in schools for over 30 years, and I want to thank you all for your commitment to Holyoke Public Schools and to our kids and our families. I love working in Holyoke. So I want to start with first that one of the very first things that we did as a study team is to conduct a thorough review of available research and literature so that we could gain a deeper understanding of best practices. While we had lots of folks with deep experience in Holyoke and Holyoke schools, we wanted to make sure that we broadened what we knew beyond our own personal and professional experiences. So our research topics included student learning models and frameworks, brain science, social and emotional learning, parental and community engagement, and transitions between grade levels. The Association of Middle Level Educators especially provided relevant research on the important components of a robust middle school experience. We also looked at models of urban schools where students were excelling academically and otherwise, especially students in communities that shared the same demographics, the strengths and the challenges that our families and community bring to school. Next slide, please, Erin. We also reviewed data internal to Holyoke with an emphasis on data directly drawn directly prior to the pandemic as a more typical year. The aggregate district data surrounding middle school has been remarkably stagnant in terms of academic performance and student perceptions about school experience. Of course, there are variations from year to year and from school to school. This slide captures some of the most startling takeaways from the data sets, which included STAR, which is a diagnostic set of math and ELA assessments that we give to students at the beginning and the end of the year. Middle school on track data. Middle school on track data captures students' grades in English and math and their attendance. And it is a proven set of statistics that help us identify and predict student readiness for success in high school, especially in regards to preventing high school dropouts. Their MCAS scores, and then the Panorama Culture and Climate data. That's an annual survey that we conduct with students and staff to get their perceptual data about school and their experience. We do see some strengths in the data, including the fact that 75% of our kids feel that their culture and native language are respected, with no statistical variation by race. And that is a measure that has steadily improved across schools in the 4 years that I've been here. But what I think the takeaway is, and that's highlighted here in this bottom box, our kids are not prepared for high school, and they deserve and want more from their middle school experience. Erin, can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. As we referenced earlier, we had more than 550 people from different constituencies and schools take our survey around their hopes and expectations for a middle school experience in Holyoke. These are some of the key takeaways that we saw from those survey results. These first three, you can see some very wide and deep agreement around some very particular aspects of the middle school experience, including an advisory period, making sure the kids are on a path to complete the Mass Core requirement for high school students, and making sure that middle school programming directly connects to the high school programming that we have at both our North and our Dean campuses. A quick word on advisory period. We'll get to this again, but an advisory period is a very specific class that exists during the school day, that is led by teachers, that gets at the academic and social and emotional behaviors and learning and dispositions that are critical to kids being successful first in school and later on in life. The Mass Core requirements are requirements that are expected of any student who looks to graduate from high school and move on to a four-year university, public university here in Massachusetts. And that includes successfully completing 4 years of English and math, 3 years of history and science, 2 years of a foreign language, and 1 year of the unified arts, with the language and the arts piece waived for graduates from vocational programs who spend a good chunk of their daily schedule in their shops. I think Erin referenced earlier in your previous discussion, before we got into this, about using previous middle school building work as a starting point. And you can see here that almost 2/3 of the respondents felt that we ought to start with the previous plans as a starting point for the plans that we would hope to have for a new middle school. And then finally, just that last note there is that more than half of the folks supported that having, if we have 2 or maybe 3 middle schools, depending on the grade configuration that we eventually land on, that folks were good with, more than half were good with the schools not being exactly the same, but having a bit of a twist, so that there would be some different programming. So, for example, as we grow out our dual language program K-8s, one of the schools may have a very strong dual language strand, which may not be at the other middle school. Erin, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Let's see, I'm trying to follow along here. We also conducted, as Mr. Clark spoke, we very much have wanted to have interviews and focus groups with various constituencies about their middle school experience. And certainly these aren't the ends, but they're the ones that we use for our process. And out of those interviews and focus groups, these 4 themes emerged. And they're very much along the lines of what you'll see when we come to our recommendations. People are in support of clear and rigorous expectations for our students. That goes back to our Mass Core completion. People very much want a middle school experience that has options for enrichment and exploration for our students. They also are very committed to the fact that we're paying attention to our students' unique developmental needs in a social and emotional learning program, and that our decisions are both transparent and rooted in the district's commitment to equity for kids and families. Great, thanks. This next slide just captures some quotes from, we had a panelist as part of our final meeting where we dug into grade configurations. You can see for yourself where these are. I would say that the one that made the most impact on the study team as we were wrestling with grade configurations was Ron Berger's, which is at the end of the day, whether we go with a 5A configuration or a 6A configuration, and Aaron will cover that in a little bit. What is really important is that we do it well. And in doing it well, we have some guiding beliefs and some specific recommendations that we want to bring to you now. And that's where we want to go to our next slide. Thanks. Can I ask just one person to be brave and read this proposed vision for Holyoke Public School middle schools, and not Jackie Clasheen?
I'll read it.
Thank
HPS middle school students, I'm sorry. HPS middle schools equip students with the skills and experiences to excel academically and socially in high school and beyond.
Great. Thank you, Sal Kanata. Simple and straightforward. Our job in middle school is to prepare students to be successful in high school, and that means more than just successful academically. Next slide, please. We have we took the 16 characteristics of effective middle schools from the Association of Middle Level Educators. We added a 17th based on feedback that folks very much wanted, applied learning inside and outside of the classroom in the school day. And we asked people in our survey, what are the most important beliefs that you would want to guide a middle school experience? And these are the results of that. If you think back to that middle school student that you put in your mind when Jackie asked you to think of that one kid that you knew that wasn't successful, if that school had active, purposeful learning, if it had multiple learning and teaching approaches, if there were activities inside and outside the classroom, if the school was inviting, safe, inclusive, supportive of all, and if that young person knew that adults valued all young adolescents, would they have had a different experience? We feel strongly that they absolutely positively would, and that these beliefs need to guide our move into middle school, into developing specific middle schools. Next slide. We also survey people to get their thoughts on the most important skills that students would need to acquire by the end of 8th grade to set them up for success in high school. As you look at these 5 skills, I think that all of us would think that these are exactly the same critical skills that we would want to see people using in their public, professional, and private lives, right? We would want to see city councilors and school committee members using these. We would want to see superintendents and middle school principals using these. We would want to see translators and chief of schools using these just as much as we'd want to see bankers, realtors, and construction managers. Okay, next slide, Aaron. So we do have some academic, as I said, we've broken out our recommendations into 4 buckets. That first bucket is around academic recommendations. First and foremost, students need to have a high quality curriculum and instruction so that they are ready to be mass course successful when they are entering freshman year. This doesn't just mean English, language arts, and math. It means that students need and want a well-rounded education. Second to this is the exposure to enrichment and career pathways. Pathways that we touched upon in our previously, in a previous slide, and the pathways and careers that we have available for kids on our Dean and our North campuses. For example, as far as enrichment, our middle school students don't have access to world languages unless they are in dual language. As Jackie said, we can do better than that. Next slide. Social and emotional recommendations. We are doing our very best to provide numbers 2, 3, and 4 here. We've got a plethora of community agencies that we work with. Our leadership, school leadership and teachers are 100% committed to social emotional learning and mental health. What we don't have across the board for our middle level, for our middle school students, is we don't have an advisory period. We don't have a moment in the day where we are paying intentional, discrete attention to how you develop yourself as a young human being and how you develop the kinds of skills and dispositions it takes to be successful in school and in the world beyond. That's what an advisory period would be, and that is something that our team felt very strongly that our middle school program needed to carry. Next slide, please, Aaron. We also had equity recommendations. Again, we've talked about making sure that all of our kids have access to specialty programming and exposure to a variety of enrichment. I want to call your attention to really our third bullet here, and that is that we want to make sure that we are balancing the number and needs of special populations across schools. We want to make sure that both schools are seen as a place where students who are already excelling can continue to excel, and where students who need that additional support are going to be able to get that additional support, and that one school does not, service one kind of kid and another school the other. This needs to be especially true. Sorry, Aaron, if you could just go back to that. This needs to be especially true because as we look at our performance data across our grades, we see persistent demographic gaps between the performance of kids who have students with disabilities, students who are English language learners, or students who are coming from low-income homes. That is something that we need to turn around. Operational recommendations. Next slide, Aaron. Thanks. We need to develop a plan for middle schools that works with and without a new building. Remember, we are not going to get 2 or 3 new buildings. At most, we're going to get 1 new building. So the middle school program needs to work, regardless of whether or not it's happening in a new building or an existing building. We need to make sure that we have enough students per grade to allow for class and programming variety. It's tough to have an electives program for a school of 240. We just don't get enough teacher positions that follow 240 students to offer the kind of robust program that we want to offer. Sal Canada can talk ad nauseum about that struggle. We want to make sure that within the school day, there's time for educators to collaborate and work together on curriculum and assessment and on student support. And we want to make sure that there's a continuity of programming from elementary school to middle school to go along with what we want to have in terms of middle school to high school compatibility. And then finally, the team felt strongly that we wanted to utilize previous middle school building work as its starting point. And now I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Erin. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve and Jackie. Once again, I'm Erin Linville, Chief of Strategy and Turnaround for Holyoke Public Schools. This is my 7th year in the district. I work closely with Dr. Mahoney on the high school redesign and have been involved with the new middle school launches and the middle school building efforts for several years now. There is one issue that the middle grades collaborative study team wasn't able to resolve, and that is the one on the precise grade levels that should be counted as middle school. Given our number of students per grade in Holyoke and the capacity of the schools we already have, we examined 2 options most closely because they're the most realistic for Holyoke that allows us to accomplish all those recommendations that we just talked about today. So the 2 options we're looking at whether to have 3 grades 5 through 8 schools, that's option 1 in purple, or 2 grades 6 through 8 schools, option 2 in yellow. In option 1, the dual language would be a small standalone middle school of about 400 students across 4 grades, so 100 students per grade. The other 2 schools would be 550 students, so about 140 students per grade. There would be 5 elementary schools in total, one elementary school would likely feed into the dual language middle school, and then 2 elementary schools would feed into each of the other 2 middle schools. Of course, we could still maintain some choice for families if their child wanted to attend another one of Holyoke's middle schools. In the second option, we have 2 grades 6 through 8 schools with 550 students per school. That is what the designs for the previous 2 building middle school project was. Since it's only 3 grade spans, there would be 183 students per grade. Dual language would be a strand in one of the schools, about 25% of their day. For example, 1 Spanish language arts class and 1 like social studies class in Spanish, for example. There is a dual language task force, which I'm on, that Jackie's on, that's studying this. We would have 6, in this case, we would have 6 elementary schools with 3 elementary schools each feeding into each of the middle schools. In both cases, this is larger. Each of these schools is a little bit larger than our current middle school size of 330 students. And then it would put us at about the national and state averages for size of middle schools. There are some pros to both models that we see that are really important that I want to emphasize. In each model, there are enough students to allow for the variety of programming and electives that everybody wants, while not being too large that students aren't well known by staff. In each model, we could stop having schools be co-located. Holyoke STEM wouldn't need to be co-located with Dean Tech anymore. Peck and Veritas wouldn't need to share a building. And if we wanted, there could be enough internal capacity in our existing schools for any students who would be displaced when a new Peck building was being built, if that's the route that this committee decides and recommends the Peck site. A con of both of these models is that not every child will be able to experience a new middle school building. So we will have to work carefully with many stakeholders to make sure that each middle school is an attractive option for students, families, and staff. Yet there are obviously pros and cons to each model that we studied. I want to highlight a few, but you should look at these notes and I'll share the presentation with you afterwards too. In the 5 to 8 model on this page, the most significant advantage is that there's an extra year for students and families to develop relationships with staff and support students to achieve that academic growth. On the flip side, some people view 5th grade as too young for middle school and feel they should remain in elementary school. There are ways to mitigate this though, such as having a grades 5 and 6 team versus a grade 7-8 team with different activities by grade span and more independence for those later grades. On the pro side, this would allow our 5 elementary schools to have a standard about 4 classes per grade. So there would be a pretty much equal number of students per elementary school. And on the operational side, having 3 middle schools, On the operational side, having 3 middle schools for cross-school collaboration and coordinating transitions to high school is a little more complex than having only 2 schools. So that's a con, obviously. And then finally, this is both a pro and a con, but due to the number of students per school, this model would require more innovative staffing models. It wouldn't be like what you might have experienced or what I experienced in middle school, like 1 hour of language arts, 1 hour of math, 1 hour of science, 1 hour of social studies. There would definitely be opportunities to maybe double up on language arts or math, or have an integrated class like a STEM class. There are a lot of possibilities, and of course these decisions would be best made at the school level with the school leader and their teachers. On the next slide, I talk about the pros and cons of the 2 grades 6 through 8 schools. The biggest pro is that 3 grades is a tighter developmental span. The flip side of this is that students have only 3 years in a school to develop relationships and accelerate learning during a time of a lot of personal change for students. On the pro side, a lot of our curriculum and Common Core standards are kind of grouped by that grade band. In this model, dual language students would be integrated into the existing middle school, so it puts less pressure on the system to make sure there's like an ideal number of students in dual language kindergarten, feeding up through the grade to make sure that there's enough kids for a standalone dual language middle school. And on the positive side, the cohesion and collaboration and coordination between just 2 middle schools with the high schools would be simpler. On the con side, the 6 elementary schools would need to vary a little bit in size. Some of the elementary schools would just have 3 classes per grade. Some would have about 4 classes per grade due to space constraints and just the total number of kids that we have. I don't really think that's a big drawback though. Additionally, we entered into the partnership with Veritas for their model, which is a grades 5 through 8 model. So that's a con that this would not allow them to continue in that exact model. So our 16-member team, of which we have a number of members on this phone call, including Dr. Mahoney, Jackie, Aaron Brunel, and Whitney Anderson, and then also like members from, teachers like from Holyoke STEM, for example. And after all that research, all that data, all those conversations, we weren't able to reach consensus on the grade span. I would love to say that we had a clear preference, but like Dr. Mahoney said, our most significant takeaway was that both of these can work. It's much more important that we implement a strong model. It's just up to us to make sure it happens. As a whole, our group had a slight preference for 2 grades 6 through 8 schools, but once again, our group was only 16 people. A really important next step is for us to share findings from our work with stakeholders and then solicit input. It's not like it's going to be a vote. This is like a complicated issue, but we want to work with key stakeholders to get input on this. Okay, so our next steps. And when I say this page here details the next steps that we hope occur in the next couple of months. As I mentioned, we're eager to share our recommendations with many stakeholders. We talked to some principals yesterday. You guys are a super important group. We have school committee on Monday. We have staff meetings coming up. We want to talk with families and students. We want to get your all input on how these recommendations resonate with you, and then your thoughts on the grade span question and the timing of when to move forward with continuing our plan for distinct elementary and middle schools. It's really important for Superintendent Soto, with input from the school committee and other HPS staff, to make decisions regarding grades 5 through 8 or grades 6 through 8. And then also on the dual language model in middle school. We obviously presented to Superintendent Soto, but he wants to hear from everybody as we make final decisions. The school building committee, you guys all, will definitely need to work with the city to decide for sure on the school location, and then secure that a vote and funding to enter into the feasibility stage of the project, obviously. So those are things I hope happen in the next 5 months. But there are a number of things that we recommend in the midterm too. And for example, teams now could start to study what would advisory look like in our middle schools? What would training look like? How would we need to make sure that we could do this really well? How could we begin to offer world language programs in middle school? We also want to work closely with the school committee, city leaders, staff, and students to solicit input on how to move forward with this plan for distinct elementary and middle schools in a way that minimizes disruption to the extent possible, plans for strong structural and operational requirements that allow a strong academic program to flourish, and then is financially sustainable, not just from the building perspective, but from the HPS total budget perspective. We're obviously not going to have a bunch of ESSER money forever. This could require a rezoning or closing 1 to 2 schools over the next 2 to 5 to 7 years. Once we have this plan, and it's really important that we give, and then once we decide on that as a community, like when do we want to move forward with that decision, then we really need to make sure that we give school leaders and teams ample time to plan for their revised school configuration. There's obviously significant staffing, scheduling, teaming, program design issues. As we've done in the past with any of our school configurations, when we opened up Holyoke STEM and Veritas, when we move some of the K-8s to elementary schools. I want to reiterate that all educators in good standing with the district would continue to have jobs in HPS. We really need to keep our talented and dedicated staff members in Holyoke. There would be a process, just as there were before, where staff can express preference for which school they would like to be at, and then they would get like preference for interviews. And then at the very least, we would place someone. There are a lot of operational aspects to this plan too, such as shifts to transportation, moving furniture, supplies. This all takes time to do well. So one of the biggest decisions left to be made is, do we wait to continue to shift to this distinct elementary and middle school model until a new middle school building is built in 5 to 7 years, or can we move forward sooner rather than later? I personally recommend moving forward sooner rather than later, because we have existing things that are in process. For example, we have dual language kids at Ian White that are going to need a middle school to go to. And right now, Blessed Sacrament, I don't think would have space for everybody. And then plus Ian White kids currently go to Holyoke STEM. If some of them start to go to another dual language middle school, then now we're back to STEM not having enough kids. So like I like to say we're like in this teenager stage or preteen stage where we have a lot of things in process that we can't just like wait, in my opinion, for 7 years. There would still be some decisions that we're forced to make. So for discussion, I don't want to do breakout groups. I'd prefer to keep this whole group. I'm curious, our team is curious, what resonated with you, what did you disagree with, and what do you still have questions about? I will also have a feedback survey that I can send to you all next week too, because I feel like this is definitely a complicated topic and people might need some time just to like digest.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think what resonated with me the most, and what I want to be very clear out the gate with, is that the decision to go with the 5 to 8 model or the 6 to 8 model is really a critical milestone in Holyoke that is going to be around for a long time to come beyond receivership. And it is a decision that I'm not going to make alone. It's a decision that I'm going to engage the school committee in heavily. You know, our school committee members are very, very dedicated individuals. And regardless of what people feel about receivership and what the school committee's role is during this receivership period, this isn't a decision that I'm gonna make without their input, because it's gonna live beyond receivership. And I'm just gonna go out and say, in my personal opinion, after looking at resource allocation and being the CFO when I did, and looking at another district like Springfield, I think that one of the biggest reasons we are underperforming, and particularly in the middle schools, is because of that decision made a long time ago to go in to be K-8s and to have very, very tiny, small middle schools with small grade spans across the entire city, just to save money on transportation. I wholeheartedly believe that was a mistake after watching it. No offense to anybody involved in making that decision, but this next decision is so important to me and so important to this community that we have to take it seriously, because it's a decision we're going to have to live with for a long time to come.
Ephraim?
This report, to me, has quite a few things that are germane to our work, and some that we can chime on, but it really it's not the process to be decided through this committee. So therefore, it will be very difficult to start into the nitty-gritty. We have to digest. So we need the PowerPoint slide as a minimum, any report that you care to send us. We need a little bit of description of what Veritas is all about and what they try to accomplish, what STEM is all about, what they try to accomplish. We have some information about dual language, or we think we know about dual language, but any information will be appreciated. Because going back to what Superintendent Soto said at the beginning, we are not to chime in on curriculum. I understood that very well. For one, the core curriculum, the base for every student, is already defined by the state. And some other levels compete, is the competency of the school committee. However, we can supplement, not supplant, in order to decide what flavor the different middle schools will have, so that one is not more attractive than the other to the population. And in order to do that, we need to digest and look into all the aspects of this report. Not every single thing we should assume that is to be discussed or even decided at our level, because there are quite a bit of things there that it is information for us. Like, for example, if you are going to strongly commit to an advisory, what does that mean in terms of number of classrooms? If you are going to truly commit to a social emotional program, does that mean that you need a few more offices because you are going to have more counselors, or and so on and so forth, but not for us to start discussing, you should have this many counselors, or you should have this other type of core program that is not supplemental.
Thank you. Aaron Brunel.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Aaron and Jackie and Stephen for the presentation. As a school committee member privileged enough to sit on this working committee, the work that was done was intensive. It was inclusive. It was done by a very broad group of professionals with different points of interest as their specialty. One of the meetings that I enjoyed the most was when we were spoken to by leaders of other middle schools, and they run on the different grade configurations. You know, it was interesting to hear the perspective on how that 5 to 6 might potentially fit versus that 7 to 8. But, you know, I think ultimately it's important for this working committee to have gotten the information to see what direction the schools are going in. It will help us judge a little bit of the design process for our middle schools. But to Aaron's point, and then even Ephraim's point, you know, Aaron's looking for our feedback, but it's not our job necessarily to critique and guide or steer that middle school collaborative working group's work.
Thank you. Mark?
I just had a question. If there was kind of like an official definition of middle schools, you know, like somebody had mentioned an organization that you guys spoke with, the American Middle Level Administrators Association or something like that. You know, are they 5 through 8? Are they 6 through 8? You know, I'm just looking for kind of some clarification on that.
Can anybody answer?
I could try it. Middle school. Yeah, you could go ahead.
I was going to say, there's not an official definition for middle school. We specifically talked about middle grades experiences. You know, some are 7-8, some are 7-8-9, some are 5-8, some are 5-6, and 7-8.
There is a definition of middle school. Okay. We traditionally develop schools based on an industrial model. You go from first to second to third, and each one you put some knowledge at the end, you have a product. What happened is in grades 6, 7, 8, 9, around that time, we had junior high schools. In other words, we tried to take the high school model and implement it with smaller kids. Middle school only means they are not elementary and they are not high school. You cannot treat them like one or the other is a specific, and those who have raised kids in the ages of 6, 7, and 8, there's a wonderful book called Get Out of My Life, but please could you give Honey and I ride to the mall? So that's the hormones of those type of kids. It should not be approached as an elementary, should not be approached as a high school. And that's why somebody started with calling it middle. Let's think about how to serve the students who are in the middle of that dichotomy.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, I saw, I think just one of the examples, just 1 out of 3 dual language schools. And my impression was there was a great interest in the dual language program. So I'm wondering, would there be more dual language if that's what people are wanting?
Thanks for that question, Dave. So right now we have about 125 kids in like kindergarten in dual language. Give me some grace for not an exactly right number. And we do see attrition over time. So we're looking at, my hypothesis is that we need like 150 kids in kindergarten in order to get like 100 kids in middle school. The dual language program like is popular. And I think that there's probably room for a little bit of growth. But I still think I think about 100 kids per grade in middle school is like about what the demand is. And that's out of 350 kids total per grade. There would still be more than one dual language school because there would be at least one dual language elementary school, at least one dual language middle school, and then there could potentially be, based on demand and the number that we needed, a dual language, like maybe a strand in another elementary school. I hope that helps a little bit. There's definitely like plenty of room for dual language, and it's definitely one of the
points. It meets a level of interest that you anticipate.
Yeah, if anything, it's like we probably need to expand a little bit at the kindergarten level to make sure that there would be enough that still stick with the program by 6th grade. And there's a number of factors that contribute to that, like people moving. A lot, we get anecdotal evidence from other schools, like other districts, that sometimes kids are like, okay, I've had like 5-6 years of dual language, I'm kind of ready to explore something else. So that dual language team is studying that.
I'll sit there.
Yeah, thank you.
Will?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Aaron. I think Jacqueline stepped out, and Stephen, thanks a lot. What stood out to me was the middle school, the 5 to 6 or the 6 to 8, whichever decision we're going to go with, the school closures. So it'll be interesting to know going forward what schools we're going to be closing. I think that's going to be really important. And then just really quick, going back to the OPM, did we ever get a number of how much the city council is going to have to approve if we end up going with the old plan? I saw the 800,000 for the new one, but I don't think I saw a number for reusing.
No, okay. So to your points, like definitely, I think like we don't have like we have a study from, I think it was 5 to 6 years ago that the MSBA helped fund about like our lowest rated facilities, but it would definitely be a community conversation around any school closures, first of all. And I definitely think we should come back and share that. And then in terms of the number, it really depends, I think, like how much you guys want to reuse from the old work. And then once we have more information, we could go to the OPM and designer. Maybe it could be like 300,000 instead of 800,000 or something, but I'm just like pretty much making that up. I don't know if Whitney has anything to add there.
Yes, then it would be subject to negotiation.
Thank you, Whitney.
Thanks a lot.
But there was some talk, if I'm not mistaken, when we were talking on our Thursday morning meetings, that by doing it, that the price tag might go down a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Okay. Aaron or Sal?
Yeah, just a quick one. And again, my thoughts are constant because when I look at data or hear data, and you mentioned middle schools, my ears completely pop up. And I heard the whole presentation yesterday as well. So I'm trying to gather all my thoughts. So, silly question. Position, we have to take a position on the grade levels, right? 5 to 8 or 6 to 8. That's our part of our charge, right?
Yes, I mean, I just want to clarify, like, it's not like it'll be, I personally defer to the superintendent Soto. I personally don't think it'll be like a vote of this committee. Who wants 5 to 8? Who wants 6 to 8?
Okay.
But like, I think we should talk about what we think would be best. And I know that Superintendent Soto is going to work with the school committee at the December retreat to talk about this.
Okay.
I think it would be interesting
so let me tell you my piece.
Survey.
All right.
I think it would, sorry, Sal, I think it would be interesting to survey this committee, but that decision is going to really live with the school committee. And we're going to weigh in all the options, but this committee's input is very much welcomed, and we can share that with the school committee. But at the end of the day, we have elected officials and school committee members that are going to help with that decision.
All right. Well, I know where I stand if everyone's interested. Yeah. Are you interested? I'm a middle school guy.
Of course
I've been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
No,
6 to 8 without question.
Okay.
Without any question at all in my mind, 6 to 8.
So this committee will make a recommendation. The superintendent and the school committee will do whatever they want with the recommendation. If it happens to be what they want to do, then they can also add, and also this committee believes like us. All I'm saying is that we need just a little bit more discussion to get to that recommendation. I hopefully it will be a consensus recommendation, and that's.
Please try not to use the chat for your votes, because that's all public record, and it's honestly an extra note taking for me, and it's hard to manage both, do the tech, the notes, and all that. Thank you.
Jessica?
I almost lost my train of thought. Sorry there. My first question is, because we need community support no matter how you look at this. And I know it was a small sample group of only 16 people, but first question is there any feedback as to the 4 people who were unsure of the grades that should be into a middle school, even though that's not our primary decision?
Yeah, I was one of the people that was unsure. One of the reasons I think that I was unsure because I think either can be done well. So I really felt like it was up to this community to decide. And personally, I think it's really up to decide. I really think what the dual language model looks like should be a primary factor, and we're researching what other programs are. And then I think it's up to us to decide how important is it to maintain grades 5 through 8 for Veritas.
Okay, thank you.
But that's pretty much what the mix was we think either could be done well. So it's not the sword we're going to die on, with the general consensus from those 4 unsures.
Right, understood. My next question, so PEC seems a little bit overcrowded now as it is Veritas. Is there a specific reason why 5th grade was removed from elementary when it was a pre-K through 8 model and transition to the model that we have now? So where it's 4th grade now ending in Kelly and Morgan.
Yeah, so just to clarify, PEC's not overcrowded right now. The capacities for 1,100, there's less than 700 kids there. That being said, for those who haven't done it and been in it, if you want to see a video that we did about it a while ago, that some of the spaces are a little bit unusual, and some of the programming, you have a big classroom that maybe just 8 kids in one program might be, so it can feel tight even though it's below capacity. That's one thing. And then the deciding for Kelly and Morgan to end at grade 4 was because Dr. Reich part of the turnaround plan was explore different middle school models and explore partners. And then, you know, we issued multiple RFPs, evaluated, and Veritas really had like above and beyond the best results there. It's like they're one of the top performing schools, and not only in Springfield, but in the state. And their model's predicated on having that grade 5. They really like having kids a year earlier, so they have 4 years of developing relationships with families, and kind of a little bit more like 5th graders. I have a 5th grader right now, so I'll speak to mine, like are still like a little bit more innocent possibly and people pleasing. Like you can kind of hook them earlier. Those my words, not Rachel Romano's words. And so because of that, wanting that model, that required Kelly and Morgan to be K-4, since they're the primary feeder schools. We also, I mean, we considered it for like Holyoke. We also opened up Holyoke STEM at the same time. And we considered like, should we try to have 5 to 8 there? There definitely wasn't space at Dean with the co-location to have grades 5 through 8 for STEM. And also because it's co-located with high school, we really didn't want to put the 5th graders in with the 12th graders. But I just like want to name, like, it's super messy, and having like 9 different school configurations for 11 schools is like really pretty crazy. And I think we do need to move past that and be consistent. We also looked at models like, could we have 1 5 to 8 and then 2 grades 6 through 8? And I've modeled that out. What happens if you do any of those configurations, like then you're back to at least 1 school being pretty small, and then you can't offer variety and the variety and choice that students want. You can't offer the type of teaming that teachers want. That's why we put forward these 2 recommendations. Thank you for listening for so long.
Could I suggest, is it okay that we move on to the next part, Aaron, where you are answering the questions about what we have to submit by November 1st? And then, you know, obviously we're going to get a chance to review the information we got on the middle school models in the interim between the next meeting. So Aaron, are you okay with that?
Yep, and I linked to the presentation. We'll send up notes by next week. Did anyone, so the ed profile questionnaire and enrollment questionnaires, it's mostly work from the district, mostly Whitney and me. So I just wanted to open it up if people had any questions or pushes. It's what we wrote is already much more extensive than what was submitted last time.
And those are just about ready to go, right?
Yeah, I'm open to feedback. I'm doing final reviews next week.
Okay, and that's a November 1st needs to be submitted. So
correct.
A little under 3 weeks. So Steve?
I just had one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
All right. Steve, did you have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, no, I was just saying it's time for me to take my dog for a walk. Thank you all.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, Mark.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on enrollment. I know it's at we're looking at a school for like the 550, and the only question I had was that 550's been for quite some time, going back to the previous projects. You know, there's been a number of buildings I see that are being rehabbed, apartment buildings, new apartment buildings coming online. You know, there's a huge need for affordable housing, which I think is going to be available in cities as opposed to local areas. Is that 550 based on any kind of numbers of new apartments that are coming online or new developments in the near future? That was the only thing. I didn't want to short sell us if we're really going to be looking at something. If we're not online for 4 to 7 years down the road, what's our population look like in that age?
That's a good question.
I can answer that. So first of all, talking to other districts, like this idea, if you build a new middle school, your enrollment's going to go up by a lot, tends not to be the case, particularly like not in super populated, urban cities. That's the first point. And then second, our enrollment in Holyoke Public Schools has actually been decreasing at the K-12 level. Overall, it looks about stagnant because we've expanded preschool so much. And I'm kind of talking pre-COVID, like, because we know pre-K numbers are low right now. So I think this idea of like kind of build it and they will come, or build for maybe more people coming, doesn't match with our enrollment trends or what other districts have seen. And the planning allows for, and Whitney or Anthony, please chime in, like it's not like if there was 552 kids, they wouldn't fit. Like there, you know, 550 can expand up to 600. There's still enough kids, or there's still enough space. Additionally, with the other schools, we're not trying to be at 100% capacity. We want to be able to have some flexibility. Like we don't want, you know, schools at 70% enrollment, but like, you know, trying to reach, like, I forget my numbers, but say around 85%, 90% is probably ideal, and gives us some flexibility and for growth.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Any other questions on those reports? Okay, can we go on to the working groups? Would that be all right? So, Aaron, did everybody get a copy? Or no?
No,
Yes?
I just emailed that to you, but I can share it on my screen if you were okay with the recommendations.
And yeah, I will. And Aaron Brunel, you just skipped. You left her off the list. Aaron, we apologize. I did not do that. So,
sorry.
Did you have preference on the working groups, Aaron?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I did fill out the form, but I didn't get to it today. So I apologize that I didn't get to it by the time of Tuesday. I don't have the list in front of me, but
so it's academics, building design, finance, and we just added marketing communications too. So we really want to try to promote making sure the public's aware of what we're doing.
Yeah, that was number 1 for me. Number 2 was academics. Number 3 was building design, and number 4 was finance.
Okay.
Aaron, I was hoping you would say communications. I would.
Yeah, and I also said I'm happy to chair one if you needed, Aaron.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll show. Let me go on screen share real quick. This isn't super pretty, but can you guys see an Excel Google Sheets document? Okay.
And I also added Kathy Ortiz to the academics as well.
Okay, so Kathy, if you want to be on both, you can be on both, or you could just do one. It's up to you. Just
yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I like your background on communication and all those kind of things. So you might be able to help with some of that marketing that we're trying to do in communications. So
okay.
Okay.
And people who requested 2 are in the dark or the light gray. So Efren and Deborah are on 2, and then the people at the top were all people who said like, yes, I'll definitely chair. So thank you for definitely chairing. And then Deborah, if you wanted a partner from the schools, Mr. Kanata or Ms. Clasheen would be happy to partner with you and co-chair.
Yes, I think that would be a wise choice to have Jackie or someone with from the schools. It would be perfect.
Great.
Sounds good.
I'll let Sal and Jackie like arm wrestle for that.
Okay, and so our next meeting is scheduled for November 4th. I'm going to assume that one of the 2 gentlemen joining us tonight will know the results, and I'm going to, at that point, even though they won't be sworn in, unless it's a 1 vote race, I will be there, but I will defer to the mayor-elect at that point. So Josh and Mike, hopefully that works. That is all right with both of you. Okay. Mike, that's okay?
Yep, thank you, Terry.
Okay. Okay, and I mean, some of the things that Aaron has suggested, and I do think they make some sense, is to bring the OPM people in to kind of explain what happened last time and what they're, so you get those of you who have not been involved, I think, get a chance to see that, and also bringing in the people who were the leaders in the last group also to be part of that, so that they can kind of give you what went well, what didn't go well. And then, I think if we can also in the interim, get the financial report from bond council. I'll let you know, I've filed a few bonds in city council in the last 2 meetings, and I've talked to bond council to make sure that it didn't have a negative impact on the ability to finance a school. So everything so far that we have bonded and approved in the city council has been reviewed in terms of the long-term financial ability of the city and paying for the school. So far everything has, yeah, we're still good. We're in good shape with that. So just so you know, as we do other things, I mean, one of the things we have to do is replace the track at the high school, but we're doing those things. And right now we're still within good financial capacity according to our bond council. Aaron?
Yep, and just again, just for point of clarity and making sure that we are doing what the MSBA wants, if you could just please get clarity on the city council appointee. Happy to have Mr. Sullivan if that's who's appointed. It's just we need to be firm on the committee list so that way we're doing what the MSBA asks. That's all. Yeah, that's why I brought it up. Thank you.
And we were, just so you know, we were looking at getting some more feedback on that. So, and as to whether or not we were okay, because we've got a counselor elect. And there was a gray area there, but that we're still waiting for clarification. I also have someone else that potentially could come in, but we're still waiting for that answer. We should have that answer, I would assume, probably within this week, but we didn't get, at least I did not see any definitive answer, yes or no. It was like, you know, maybe you should do this, but then it seemed like that was a maybe. So, I
mean, from my understanding, a lot of it's at your discretion as well as the acting mayor and being the one that forms the committee. So it certainly couldn't hurt to have an additional city councilor on this. And then, you know, 2 is always better than 1, right?
No, I hear you. But remember, well, I'll look into that. Okay, and Anthony?
Terry, I just wanted to personally thank you on behalf of all of our Holyoke Public School students for getting us to this point and for bringing together this group of people that are really invested in this project. I know you're moving on, but I know you really worked super hard, and I just really want to publicly acknowledge that and appreciate all the work that you put in to getting us this far. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so I think with those kind words, and I'm not good at getting kind words said by me, to me, Anthony, but thank you. So let's just, planning on November 4th, same time, more than likely, it's probably gonna be Zoom again. I know I get weekly statistics from the Board of Health, and believe me, I would love to see them become extremely more positive let me rephrase that, less positive, I guess, because I have to go in reverse negatives here. But we made some progress in the last week, and I'm hoping that we can continue to make that progress. But I'm thinking at least the first in November, we're still more than likely going to be in a Zoom capacity. So if everybody seemed to be okay with that. And we're going to open up as much as we can. And we do have Holyoke Media helping us to make sure that it is televised. And I know they'll play it several times before we have our next meeting. So thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if that's okay.
I also just want to say we had interpretation available. So I think that'll be available in the recording if anyone needs it.
So moved.
Motion is made to adjourn. Again, I want to thank you all for being willing to serve, and I do appreciate it. And we will see you on the 4th, and potentially Aaron will get some information out about the finances information plus some of the other things so that they can have a chance beforehand. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a safe couple of weeks. Stay safe. Stay well. Let's get all healthy. Okay. Thank you.